My guest today is Gordon Howard Lummis, who was a student at Acadia University in the 1950s. Gordon was involved in the first football team at Acadia, in the spiritual life of the university, and the campaign to build a chapel. Gordon is now retired and pursues many interests while enjoying life with his family. In between then and now is a fascinating story of a family man, a public servant, a career person, and someone with a love for the Manning Memorial Chapel and for Acadia University. His loyalty and love of Acadia continue to this day. Welcome, Gordon, and thanks for agreeing to have this conversation with us.
Well, you're being very generous. Thank you.
You recently attended the Acadia Alumni 2023 Summer Reunion. Could you tell us about the reunion and share with us some of the highlights of the experience for you?
Our class was always very involved, and we have had reunions, I think, just about every 5 years. This year it was a reunion of the 50s instead of just our class. And usually we would have, the last reunion about 5 or 6 years ago, we had, I think, 30 people. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's happened. It must be the health situation in our country, but we're down to 8. Of course, they're all getting closer to 90, so that could be part of the reason too. But it was a great reunion. It was good to see people we hadn't seen for years, and there's always in the reunions a lot of reminiscing.
Yes.
And there was a lot of that on the weekend.
Wonderful, thank you. What did you study at Acadia, and how did the academic program influence your subsequent work and other pursuits?
I took a general arts degree, majoring in economics and psychology. But I think what I learned most at Acadia was people skills. Again, it was such a small university, you knew everybody, terrific community spirit. And I think what I learned most was organizing things, which I spent the rest of my life really doing.
Yes, and what part did the football team play in some of these skills that you developed?
I can't really think of that other than team spirit. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a very good football player anyway.
And were you having games away and games here? And what did the facilities look like then?
The whole world has changed since the 50s. Mm-hmm. We were a very, very different group. I remember a girl's cousin came to town from Halifax, and we were dancing in the sub together, Student Union Building. And I said, whoops, it's 9:30, it's time for you to get in.
Yes.
Well, she said, no, I'm going to stay here. So I said, it's 10 o'clock, the seniors have to get in at this time. You have to go. She said, no, I'm staying around. So we went for a long walk, and 2 o'clock in the morning, I went to the fire escape and tried to help her up so she could crawl into one of the rooms. And the lights all came on, and everybody called my name. Everybody had to be in by 10. The girls had to be in by 10 o'clock. The girls had to bring their own bedding. And the guys had all the bedding supplied, and they had someone come and clean the room every day. The girls got in trouble if they didn't clean their room.
Wow.
So you can see a huge difference in society.
Yes.
But there's tremendous team spirit, and the Winter Carnival seemed to bring it all together. Mm-hmm. We had probably There were 700 students, I think, at the time. I'll bet we had half of them involved, building snow sculptures and putting on athletic events and going to services,
So now you have to imagine that most of the people who will be viewing this just have no context. So I want you to paint a picture for us about the Winter Carnival, about the religious life at Acadia, and the fundraising efforts of the students to build a chapel.
Back then, Acadia was really a Baptist university. And a lot of the things that were done centered around that. There was a large group of people that belonged to the student Christian movement. And there was a chapel service, I think, every day. And it was held in U Hall. I remember Charlie Taylor came to me when I went to him as the chaplain to ask if he would put on a service on Sunday, the Sunday of the Winter Carnival. And he said he'd be happy to do so, but what a shame that we have to have a small group of people in the middle of this huge university hall, the graduation hall. And he said, I thought of it. I think he thought of it. But we came up with the idea anyway that we would sell stamps. And I contacted a girl who was, her name was Diane DeLong. She's never had any credit for this. And Diane organized a large group from the student Christian movement, and they met somewhere at a long table, I remember, and they stuffed the stamps in envelopes and a letter from me asking everybody to contribute $1. And we raised, I don't know, $3,000 or $4,000 for the chapel, and they repeated it the next year. So there was she had a large group, all from the SCM, Student Christian Movement, to get the stamps out and get it organized.
Do you have an idea of how many students would normally come to one of those chapel services that Chaplain Charlie Taylor would organize?
How many would come?
Yes, roughly.
I would think 30.
About 30, right. And most of them would be part of the student Christian movement.
Most, I think, would be, yes.
Yes. And what other activities would the student Christian movement do, if you know about it?
Other than holding services, and I don't know.
Okay.
I was not a member of it, but I got Diane to get involved, and I think I don't know if she's still a clergyman or not. But I think she and her husband both became clergymen, and they were here in the valley. Last I heard, about 10 or 15 years ago.
Okay. So DeLong is her maiden name or her married
That was her maiden name, DeLong.
Okay.
And her father was a clergyman in Halifax.
Okay. So why did you get involved in the Winter Carnival and all of this business of selling stamps to raise money for a chapel? What motivated you?
I just used to get involved with everything. And I wanted it to be a good Winter Carnival, and it was on a Sunday.
Okay.
Saturday, Sunday. And you had to have a chapel service on Sunday. And so that's why I went to Charlie Taylor and encouraged him to put it on. And out of that came the idea of that. And then about 3 years later, a wonderful gift from the Mannings. And what a beautiful chapel.
I agree. It is stunning. Yes. Do you want to tell me a little bit about some of the things that you have done, your work, your public service?
Well, after several years after graduating from Acadia, I joined what was then called the Halifax Board of Trade. It was a Chamber of Commerce. And I was there for 5 years, and another 5 years in St. John Board of Trade. And then I came back to Halifax to be the CEO of that organization. And as a result, I was very active in many community activities in Halifax. And then, of course, I spent my life ever since in Wolfville, being highly involved in a lot of activities. The Friends of, probably the biggest thing was the Friends of Acadia.
Yes.
That we organized that was able to reunite the alumni and the university. But
about what time did you, what years did you build?
2001.
2001, Friends of Acadia. Okay. And it seemed to me that you have a little interest in politics and public service, because I think you ran for office as a student, and then
Yes,
was
got
there
bad.
other public service?
Badly defeated. Yes, there were three of us that ran. The first was Ian Forrest, who never really graduated, unfortunately. It was he says, the biggest mistake of his life. He worked too hard as president. Charlie Halliburton, the Honorable Charlie Halliburton today, he's a judge, and myself, and I came third. My campaign was to start a carnival, winter carnival, and they asked me to do it after I lost the election.
Well, there you go. So even without the office, you were still doing the work. Oh, yes. And did you offer yourself for service publicly after leaving?
Yes, when we came back to Halifax, came back to Wolfville, I'm sorry, I was asked if I'd run for town council, which I did. Served there for 3 or 4 years until it became difficult because we spent the winters in Florida. And I was chairman of the Economic Development Agency for the County of Kings. So yes, I've been fairly busy here too.
Yes. So there is a theme about service and about doing pioneering work, doing reconciling work, and certainly moving all things Acadia forward that I'm hearing coming from the stories you have told us and some of them that you haven't told us. So one last question for you. What gives you joy now, and what do you do for fun?
Well, I'm a very, very, very fortunate guy. I'm very happily married. We spend a lot of time down south, and I enjoy doing things for other people. And I guess I've done that most of my life.
Yes. Gordon, thank you so much for this conversation, for all that you have done and continue to do for Acadia. And thank you for being you.
Well, thank you very much. I hope you can get a shot of the stamps. We didn't talk about that. We didn't talk about finding those stamps. I'll tell you about that. Charles Taylor called me, said, Gordon, it's up to about 40 years now, or 30 years since we built the chapel. You remember those stamps? I said, yes. He said, you have any? I said, I have an old chest in the basement with old Acadia stuff in it. I'll go look. No, I don't have anything. He said, what a shame. All that history's gone. And about 5 years later, a friend called me and said, you're in the office, I want to drop in. So he dropped in and threw a little envelope on my desk. And I said, what's this? It had a 2-cent stamp on it.
Wow.
And I opened it up, and there was the letter that I had written and the stamps.
Wonderful.
I said, where did you find these? He said he had purchased somebody's stamp collection, and they were in their stamp collection. So what am I going to do with them? So I waited until the next anniversary and presented them, came down to that service. Now, it's been 30 years since I've been to Acadia, so nobody's going to know me. So I'm going to sit in the back row, and then I'll slip out.
Yeah.
And I sat in the back row, and everybody congregates in the hallway just as you leave the church. And I was having to work my way through, and there was at least 6 people that said, called me by name. And I said, that's 30 years ago. How can they still remember, you know? So I thought about it, and I said, you know, this might be a good place to retire.
Where everybody knows my name. I agree.